LPD 1041.
Signal pin assistance.
Inside the Squad, presented by the Lafayette Police Department. To serve and protect is not just a motto, it's our mission.
Sending another unit.
Step it up. Welcome back to Inside the Squad, all of our listeners and viewers. Woo! Back by popular demand, we have another true crime episode. This one is about a Walmart shooting in 2022. And we have two of our lead investigators here. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Go for it, boss. You have rank.
Thanks. I'm Lieutenant Amor with the Lafayette Police Department, obviously, but with the Violent Crimes Unit specifically. And I oversee everything from homicides to shootings to stabbings, anything that can be classified as something as a violent crime.
And I'm Sergeant Mike Zambon. I'm now working with the Violent Crimes Unit, but at the time of this call, I was with the Street Crimes Unit. I was the supervisor over there.
All right, awesome. I'm MK Reilly, and this is
Sergeant Sean Verma. I don't have the energy of MK this morning.
It's too early for that.
Yeah.
So this case, we really want to emphasize how much work and manpower really goes into a case. This one specifically, a lot of organizations helped with it, and the suspect was actually found in another state. So let's start off from the very beginning, from the first 911 call. Walk us through that.
We'll take it away. I was off when this came in.
Well, I mean...
Well, it comes into patrol, right?
Yeah, the patrol response.
The 911 call comes into the patrol division first from Walmart. It was our Blue Night patrol shift that was working, and at the time, I was a sergeant on Blue Night's patrol, but that was also my night off, so I came in later on once I found out what was going on. But patrol gets a call for a female that was down in the parking lot. Unknown at this time what exactly happened, unknown if there was a shot fired or if there wasn't a shot fired. And then officers are basically responding in an emergency mode. They get to the Walmart, they find the female down, and then they quickly discover that she had suffered from a gunshot wound. So that's when they seize the entire scene, start investigating it, and immediately we get the Violent Crimes Unit involved in that right away.
911 state emergency.
Yeah, there's this woman, she's quite possibly overdosing or something's going on. She's bleeding real bad, like from her kneecap, and...
So at that point, I think, LT, you probably got a phone call from patrol, and you immediately said, all hands on deck, everybody head in, right?
Yeah, when anytime we have any type of major incident, we summon everybody from the crime scene investigators, which is our CSIs, which help us detail and investigate the scene itself, and then the entirety of who is available of the detective division. So we actually will utilize detectives outside of the unit for these types of cases. So, for example, this would be another example where we used the Special Victims Unit also, who assist the Violent Crimes Unit and vice versa due to manpower issues and things like that. You can't ever have enough investigators when you're trying to do something like to this magnitude. And there's always about 100 different directions you have to go at all the same time, because any type of information that comes in, it all has to be looked at. If you pick and choose what you think is the priorities of things to look at, but ultimately you need to look at all of it, because something that we may not perceive to be important at that time, we'll find out quickly later that it was very important. So the more people we can have help in those types of situations is exceptionally important. So basically I end up paging out our entire investigative unit, which consists of the Violent Crimes Unit, the Special Victims Unit, and all of our crime scene investigators. When I get to the scene, it's on the south entrance of Walmart out towards the parking lot where the whole crime scene is. It's encompassed around a vehicle, and then obviously the subject in question that was deceased. We immediately start working the area, not just for the evidence that's there. So CSIs start their process, which includes immediately having to take pictures, documenting all that, and then detectives dive into the business that's the closest and start looking for cameras, anything that can give us a clue on where things occurred. This also includes, at this time, we're also getting phone calls, 911 calls, because clearly this is going to have the attention of a lot of people. There are obviously a lot of people in the lot. There are very few hours of the night or at any time where Walmart doesn't have a decent amount of people in the parking lot. So calls began to come in about both possibly a suspect. When detectives finally when they were able to get inside and actually look at the video, you can see we're able to track a male that ends up running away from the scene to the south. And later that is also confirmed through a 911 that we get and things of that nature. So
911.
Hello?
Hi, 911.
Hello, there was a girl at Walmart. I don't know, she started screaming. I was sitting in the parking lot on 26, and a guy was running, and he ran by me. I was just sitting in my car getting ready to go in, going through my coupons, and he come running by me. He said, "Somebody help." And then he started running, and he ran over. He's got a red T-shirt, and he ran through Walmart parking lot over into Farrington Heights.
Ultimately, as this case progresses, there are an immense amount of units that are involved, from patrol, street crimes, violent crimes, special victims unit, even SWAT, and a multitude of other agencies as we continue through this.
So how many people are we talking about?
For this case alone, just with inside the Lafayette Police Department alone, there's probably at least at least 40 to 50 officers at any given
On the
moment.
scene?
Throughout working different parts of the scene. So with detectives, because not everything's happening right there at the scene. As soon as we have directions, we send them out. So like street crimes, for example, with Sergeant Zambon, I'll give them special other marching orders. And what that means is, like, if we have leads that are possibly in other locations or things that people need to be tracked down so that my detectives can talk to them, I'll send street crimes to go look for them. Any type of other alter location that could have, whether it's suspect information, witness information, they'll help us track that down too, along with to solidify it so that we can then send detectives to actually speak to them. But on the scene, you have the entire division of the patrol, which is at that time is going to be over 12. Street crimes would have consisted of 4 or 5 that would have come in. The detective division itself, we would have probably been looking at anywhere from 6 to 8 different detectives that were involved, and then CSIs would be around 4 at any given moment, if not 5. So, I mean, that's just our basic response. That doesn't include then any auxiliary responses. But I mean, this case involved both the Indianapolis Police Department, or IMPD, and Beech Grove Police Department, and then it was all the way down to.
We were in contact with San Diego PD out at their bus depot, like their Greyhound. Was it Little Rock PD? You name it, we were in contact with them.
Like before we even get to that point, when we respond to a scene like that, a lot of times when we're dealing with violent crime, we have a victim that can give us information, right? This is one of those situations where patrol, when they arrive, the victim is already pronounced dead on scene. So we're not getting anything from her side of the story. So patrol is trying to now piece together what's going on, since it's rapidly evolving. And there's a perimeter set. So right there was at least 12 officers that were occupied for probably 2 to 3 hours on a perimeter while we called in canines to start a track. They did a track. The drone unit was called in to start looking aerial footage of where can we see if somebody's running at night, whatever we can see. Surprisingly, at this time at Walmart, we didn't have too many people calling in giving us a lot of information. And then once detectives get involved, they're doing all basically they're finding pieces of the puzzle and they're starting to put together, and they're giving that information out to the units on the ground to go follow up on. And that's where SCU was heavily involved. And basically they're just waiting to get information, and as soon as they get that information, they're going straight for that follow-up. So when we're talking about agencies that are involved, just within our department, we had pretty much the entire patrol division, the drone unit, members of the SWAT team, members of our mobile field force to relieve some of the patrol units so they could go back to their normal operations. Because even though we have, that's the highest priority call that's happening, but we still have other 911 calls, other calls that are coming in. So we have to relieve officers so they can go and still respond to other parts of the city. So that's why it's so important that everyone comes together like that and start that process, because we can't forget about the rest of the city.
And that's one of the benefits of having a street crimes unit, because at the time we were operating within the operations division, so we didn't fall underneath patrol, we didn't fall underneath the detective division. We kind of fell within what the needs of the department were. And when this call came out, I started calling all the guys in that were available. We met with Lieutenant Amor, figured out what we had. We started a track so we could relieve those patrol guys. And then we stayed on this investigation until the suspect was caught, because we would help supplement them with, hey, we have this guy, we need them tracked down. We have this person, we need them tracked down. So they'd send it to us, because we were trained highly in surveillance and doing takedowns and talking to people to get them to come to headquarters to speak with detectives.
What is the process in tracking a suspect? You guys mentioned
and what capacity? We do canine tracks. We can use the drone. Using video that we find around, we can kind of pick up where they were at. In this case, we started with a canine track from the last known location, and Officer Brainerd was leading the track with his canine Kilo. Took us all the way around in the neighborhoods out that way.
And was the last known location Walmart or from the dispatch call?
I think it was the west end of that parking lot is where we started, where the last time the 911 caller saw him.
Okay.
We started from there, and I mean, canine stuff, it's not my forte, but tracking and being on tracks and doing the kind of the hunting part of it, that's kind of where street crimes comes into play.
From the Walmart cameras, did you see the crime happen, so you knew exactly who it was and what he was wearing?
Unfortunately, we could see the area where the crime happened, but vehicles blocked some of the view so that we couldn't see it very specifically happen. It wasn't as obvious as one would hope in those types of situations. So because of the vehicles and the way they were positioned, we saw the incident itself, but not the actual action of it. And then we saw what ended up being a male run away to the south of the parking lot. It was determined through not just the cameras, but then through interviews and stuff like that, while they were out conducting a track, that the suspect did get picked up by an individual and actually driven across the street to McDonald's and moved out of the area, which then would also render a canine track obsolete, because at that point we can't track a car with a dog like that. So he was actually removed from the situation fairly quickly, unfortunately, which patrol had an excellent response. But if in that type of situation, there's not much you can do. We do lock down the parking lot, unfortunately, for people that were there at the store, their cars and things, anything that was within probably 75 plus yards of that location was held for many hours as it was all reviewed. But after we fast forward into going through cameras, I don't want to minimize how long this took, because it seems like, we just found out, and if you depending on what TV show you prefer, it always seems like it takes a couple minutes. So it unfortunately takes even fast is a couple hours. We press the gas as fast as possible to try and collect as much information in the first 12 hours of any major crime, but especially in something like this, because anything past that, it becomes very stale and it's very difficult to actually achieve. So in this case, after interviewing an insurmountable amount of people, tracking everything from 911s to cameras, surveillance cameras, and not just from that business, from every business that was around there, we determined that he had left the area, and we were actually able to come up with some addresses. We were also able to determine, thanks to, again, back to cameras and frequenting going into the business, we were actually able to determine who we believed a suspect was at this point, and then we were able to provide those addresses to the street crimes unit while we were still there ascertaining more information, and send them to look for that address to see if they could set up on what a surveillance detail, essentially, to see if what information they could collect from that type of an assignment.
And what information was collected?
Well, we would go to the addresses that we were provided. We'd start looking at call history, vehicles out front, to see if it matched up, if they had moved, or if they were still had a family connection there that matched the call history that we had. And we were kind of all over the city at one point. We were in West Lafayette, went out to the county out by Faith. So if we could determine as quickly as we could if the address was involved or was relatively current, we would position somebody there. If we figured out that wasn't the case, we'd move on to the next one. Because there's a kind of that time constraint on the front end of this investigation, to where they're trying to figure out what their next play is, to if we can cut them off before they can get there. Because I remember we were over on the west side, and then we got a call about somebody down by Faith that was matching the description.
Yep.
And jumped on 65, got down there as quick as we could. The drone unit was out there.
Ran over there. Yep.
We don't know what that person saw, but it was a lead that we had to investigate, and we had to kind of give up looking at addresses to go check that out real quick.
And that's also very, like, for the officers, for the uniformed officers, it also puts them in a very, not only a safety risk, but also in a gray area, because all we have is, hey, there's a person, if you know about the area of Faith, there's like a pond, and there's like a little walking trail around the pond. And this is at night. I don't remember exactly what time it was, but this was later at night, where it's unusual for somebody to be walking at that time in that trail. So this person called us like, hey, there's a person walking around this trail around this pond on Faith. So we all, hurry up and we get over in the area. We throw the drone up first, and we see a thermal image of a person walking, but we're not confirmed whether this is a suspect or not. So like, now you have to ask yourself, like, how do I, as an officer, approach this guy? Do I just pull my guns out and put him on the ground and approach him that way, or do we go casually, or what? Because this person is on the run, right? He just killed somebody. He's on the run. That's why time is so important. So this one, we actually kind of just watched him for a little bit and recognized his behavior he was literally just on a walk. And we got a little bit closer to him, and then realized that nope, he's just on a walk. Went and had a consensual encounter with him, confirmed he had no involvement, and then moved on to the next follow up.
And the next one, I think, was all the way on the south side, and we missed him down there by, I think, 20-30 minutes.
Now that one, it was the suspect.
That was the suspect down on the south side. And we went down there, missed him. He caught a ride down to Indianapolis. We were able to make contact at that trailer home that he was supposed to be at. Talked to the individual that was inside, said, oh yeah, my mom and I think boyfriend just took him down to Indianapolis. It ends up that I think the suspect's mom lived on the east side.
Yeah.
So we were able to kind of narrow that focus down a little bit more. We ended up doing a traffic stop on the people who gave him a ride when they were coming back, and they provided some information of where they dropped him off to even kind of close it down even more. So at that point, it was me and two other street crimes guys. We swapped into further unmarked cars, went down to the area where his mom lived, and sat up on surveillance while detectives coordinated with Marion County prosecutor and the IMPD SWAT team to get a search warrant and get their SWAT team spun up down there. So if you think about it, we've got 3 Lafayette street crimes guys down on the east side of Indianapolis. We got a detective coordinating with a homicide detective in Marion, or out of IMPD, who's then getting a search warrant through Marion County, passing it off to IMPD SWAT team, who then I had to meet with in a Kroger parking lot to kind of fill them in on what we had, and then pass that off to them. And we just kind of sat and watched them hit the house.
I almost got lost there.
It was a lot. And this was all after, I think the call came out at 9 o'clock at night.
It was something like 9 or 10 in the evening.
Everybody that's working has been up, unless they were a patrol night shift guy and their normal hours are 6P to 6A. Detectives, if they are working normal hours or, family time, because it was Labor Day weekend, they've been up since 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and then they're working all the way through the night till about 8 o'clock the next morning.
Oh, yeah, and then some.
And then, the street crimes guys worked until we got home about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because we had to search the house down there to see if we could find anything. So everybody's up for 20 plus hours working, get home, sleep a few hours, and we wake up, and then we get another tip based off of some new information about him possibly being in Beech Grove. So we drive down to Beech Grove, and we sat down there for 10 to 12 hours working with Beech Grove doing surveillance. And their SWAT team hit the house or the apartment he was in.
Yeah, and I think there's I guess too, it's kind of a more of an educational thing here. There's a misconception like with jurisdictions and things like that. I think a lot of people believe that for example, like the Lafayette Police Department, their jurisdiction is our jurisdiction is the city of Lafayette. That's our area of responsibility. Our jurisdiction is the state of Indiana. So in other words, if you do something in Lafayette and you travel to Indianapolis, we're going to travel with you. And that's what happened in this case, and we used our units. The huge help, though, could not have been done without the Indianapolis assistance. IMPD was just an absolute huge asset. So was Beech Grove. We also had information at this point that there was a possibility that he was trying to get on a bus. We did not have the manpower to cover Indianapolis's bus stations on top of everything else. So Indianapolis provided us with their plainclothes officers, and they had people positioned at different bus stations even to participate in to apprehend the suspect at this point, which is huge because we can't generate that amount of manpower. So we were still investigating things up here in Lafayette, and then we were down there. So, Indianapolis Police Department then uses their SWAT team. The information we had, again, unfortunately, we missed him by a couple hours only, because again, this is like as fast as we can go because people don't sit still, obviously, if they've committed this type of crime. And after the Indianapolis Police Department hit his mother's residence, he obviously wasn't there. We started over again, at least from that point, and started collecting as much information and working as much as we could. With Indianapolis, myself and another detective then went down. We got some information based on, we literally pull information from everywhere. We'll interview everybody that was near or around, and we got information that that his mom was connected to another individual, possibly through her work down in Indianapolis. So we went down and started talking to the people at that work, things of that nature, and we were able to ascertain another address that was actually in Beech Grove. So now we're working with the Beech Grove Police Department, which is separate from Indianapolis, where we then worked with, yet again, another Marion County judge and things of that nature, obtained yet another search warrant for another apartment down in Beech Grove, and then used Beech Grove's SWAT team, and we went and hit that apartment. Unfortunately, we missed him by about 2 hours again. So he'd spent the night and then gotten up and then had went and what we perceived at that point based on interviewing people in and around that location, that he'd been taken to a bus station again. So again, Indianapolis has been on bus stations. We were trying our best to keep track of them, but again, this is an immense undertaking in general. If you look at bus stations down in Indianapolis, anywhere where it's a major metropolitan area, you have so many people, and even if you have officers plainclothes there looking for somebody, it's still very difficult. We did later determine that he did actually successfully get on the bus. We weren't sure about that, so we started working with other agencies literally across the country trying to cut off this bus, and I think you were talking about...
We figured it was going to San Diego. I think that was the bus route that information we had. He was going to San Diego. So we got a hold of, because one of our officers worked at San Diego PD, so he started reaching out to his contacts to see if he can get in touch with somebody who would be at that depot to where they could pick him up. Because I think at the time we had an escape warrant that was issued. So we had a nationwide extraditable warrant for escape as we were still working the homicide.
And the escape warrant, to go back on that, it was because he was on
a probation.
He was
or
on
community
corrections, something like that.
So by fleeing the state, they issued an emergency escape warrant for him.
So again, not to I can't emphasize this enough. Just the event of going. So each one of those events was an entire day. So when Sergeant Zambon was talking about the first one down in the South Side of Indianapolis, that was an entire day of doing surveillance, sitting on the house, hoping that he was there, and then ended up hitting it with the Indianapolis SWAT team. Beech Grove the next day, me and another detective, because by then, the street crimes guys, we were trading them in and out, letting them try to sleep for like a couple hours and then going back at it. So we end up down in Beech Grove. That is another entire day. While we're working on probable cause to apply for the warrant, street crimes is sitting on the apartment
and doing the drug task force
and doing surveillance. Yeah, it's another unit that helps. So the Tiffany County Drug Task Force at different moments, again, it's none of the agencies are, going to let a crime like this occur and not participate if we need them. So like the Tippecanoe County Drug Task Force consists of multiple agencies at any given moment. Usually when it's full staffed, it's supposed to have Purdue, Lafayette, West Lafayette, Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Department, and Indiana State Police. So I mean, that's just another one of those things where it was they're one of their specialties is surveillance. So we utilize them in street crimes to help do that. So while we're preparing the affidavit so that we can have a judge sign it, they're sitting on that. Beech Grove doesn't have, that's not a huge department, but they had their own SWAT team. So then they allow us to use their SWAT team to go ahead and serve our warrant. So, and then that provided us with yet another witness who we had spent hours interviewing, talking to, and getting the information necessary to be able to figure out the bus component to this. And then we work with both bus company through having to, you have to achieve, it's not like we can just make a phone call and say, hey, please share us this information. You have to, all these require subpoenas and everybody's participation in order to try and get this stuff, along with other agencies along the bus route from here all the way to California, setting up on these different stops in an effort to prevent this individual from escaping for what he's done. And we later figure out we actually stopped the bus. I cannot remember where we stopped it. I don't remember the agency, so I apologize. But the bus was actually stopped, and he was determined to not be on the bus. So that was super frustrating. But what had happened, we later find out, is that he'd gotten off the bus at a kind of like I don't know if it was even a scheduled stop, but he managed to get off the bus down in Arkansas, which was not his destination. We were pretty positive where his destination was, and it was not there. So fortunately, detectives, and again, this is all about rapport building, reaching out, and then everybody working together. So fortunately for us, at this point, he'd run out of money. He'd run out of resources. We'd run him out of every person that he knew, and he was now basically by himself in a town. He didn't know anybody, and he had nowhere to go. So he ends up wandering up to a public library and making a phone call home to try and get some assistance, essentially. And it was at that moment where we got contacted, and they said, hey, we think this is where he's at. He contacted us. He's out of money. He needs he's stuck. And we then sent, it was the Little Rock Police Department.
Yeah, their mounted unit.
Yeah, and they went to the library, and he briefly resisted for a little bit, not much.
Tried,
but it was pretty shortly
I think he
lived.
Came out of the library and he tried to run, right?
Yeah.
He's not out running a horse.
No,
I don't think.
no.
So he got taken down by a mountain unit.
That is true.
Yeah, I'll show the body cam footage of this.
Nice.
Yeah.
I gave them the phone number. I got it in there wrote down. The girl, her name is Megan. She said her ex-husband is wanted for murder. He was in here because we got him on camera. I think so. They checked the fifth floor and they couldn't find him anywhere.
Did you give a date of birth on this guy, or?
His name is Anthony Perez.
Did he have a white t-shirt this morning?
How long ago did he she called me right after he called her.
He looked like this?
Yeah, that's him.
Agnes, step over here for me. Hold on. Do not run. Do not run. Turn around. Turn around for me. Just turn around when he talks to you, all right?
Okay, but that's not my name.
We'll check that out.
Stop where you are.
Stop. See them horses? Watch. Hit your hand.
I put my hands up the whole time. Why are you assaulting me?
Hit him against the hands behind his back. Stop! Go against the bill.
Why are you assaulting me?
And then after that, so he was taken into custody, which was like I said, this is, I don't even remember how many hours at this point. I know we're at least over 3 days.
It was because we'd gone to the SWAT competition when we figured out he was on the bus, and we were trying to figure out where he was at. So they got him on the 7th. I think it was the second day of the competition. So from the 4th to the 7th, we've been working around the clock to we've been working around the clock from September 4th to the 7th, and finally, when he got caught, it was like 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
On the 7th, something like that.
So then it's still not, at that point, it's still not over. So 2 detectives got sent down to Little Rock to interview him, and which they did a phenomenal job, and he ended up confessing to huge portions of this, and that's a big deal too. Just detectives kind of putting the other end to this whole thing and going down and having the opportunity to speak with him. So again, I mean, now you're talking different states, and we're still going to go there. And then later he was extradited back to Tippecanoe County for murder.
So how many days total did this go on for?
Well, it depends, because it's still, even though it started, and this is something that I've learned in my new role up here attached to the Violent Crimes Unit. When we have the initial call, you get the first 90-something hours where you're hitting it hard. Mm-hmm. You're following up on all your leads, and if you have the suspect and you're able to find him, you make the arrest. If they're able to make it outside of that a little bit, I don't say it slows down, but it becomes a lot harder because the pool of leads that you can find becomes a lot smaller. So even after an arrest is made, say within that first 90 hours, you still have all the follow-up, all the video. You have to send your subpoenas off to the bus depots to get the tickets, who purchased the tickets, because there may be charges pending against them for helping someone escape and flee a potential murder charge. So once the arrest is made, it still goes on. I'd say the case still goes on until there's either a plea by the suspect or a conviction, and then that could be 2, 3 years, 4 years from now.
I think it was 5 days from the incident occurring to actually in custody was 5 days.
Which is really good for like statistics, because they do say that every 24 hours your chances of catching him is slimming down more and more and more. So I think this one was successful because of how well everybody worked together, all the resources that came together. And sometimes working with other agencies, just trying to get those resources takes a lot of time, and getting them on board, explaining them what we're trying to do. And we were lucky that we had good relations with IMPD down in Indy, Beech Grove. Everybody just came together, and that's what sped up the process a little bit. Because is it true that his end goal was to try to get into Mexico?
It was one of the conversations that we thought we understood through talking to people, but he was definitely going to Southern California.
Yeah, so
was to try and get to Southern California.
So what ended up being his end conviction? I know he pled. What did he end up getting?
I think he got 70 years.
70 years.
Plus, he could have been habitual as well. So something that was tacked on outside of his murder conviction. But yeah, no, this was a good end to a case that started off fast-paced, to say the least.
Yeah, I'd say any of these cases, the first 24 hours is a sprint, and and then depending on what you just continue to sprint, unfortunately. But I mean, that's you can't. These types of cases, you cannot take you're going to collect so much information. It's I use the analogy, it's like trying to drink from a fire hose and figure out which portions are the relevant ones and which ones aren't, because unfortunately people will call in with information and they believe it to be relevant, and then it may not be, and then that's something we still have to sift through. And you don't want to ever discourage anybody from calling in. If you think you have information, we want you to call in. We'll sort it, but that's just part of the process for us that takes more time, and sifting through that and sending whether it's just the investigative process or sending officers to look into that, it's just going to always take time, and that's we have to go as quickly. So as having the manpower and having as many people to participate in that investigation at that point is huge. So I mean, it's from the beginning to the end. I can't even imagine. My guess is minimally over the course of those 5 days, I would have to estimate I would guess there's somewhere between 300 officers probably participated in this across the country. I mean, at the minimum. I mean, I think that'd be the bare minimum.
Easily. I mean, IMPD SWAT team was, I think, 20 on top of their homicide detective and their
well, that doesn't include their plainclothes units that they positioned at buses and things of that nature.
And Beech Grove had 12 guys on their team, plus their chief allowed us to use their interview rooms. so we didn't have to drive all the way back to Lafayette.
Yeah. I mean, and then that doesn't even include, I don't want to, there's a lot of stuff happening on the CSI level, giving us direction, not just the collection of evidence for when we go to trial, but then also giving us direction. I mean, there's a lot of equipment that we use even now, especially now, where it gives us guidance where to give us direction on who to speak to and who not to speak to. And, it can be anything from location information to just suspect information and things of that nature. And that was all happening in the background. And all that stuff, you put that in the totality of the circumstances. Essentially, there's never that one. Sometimes there is, but it's pretty rare. There's never that one person that comes forward and goes, "Oh, I know everything. This is what happened. This is what time it happened. This is where it went." It doesn't work that way.
Make it easy.
We will have a totality of circumstances. So somebody might tell us something, then we confirm a little bit more with some evidence processing, and then we confirm a little bit more with some other stuff, and then that gives us a direction. So again, it can't be done by any one person. And you see, I like to reference TV, like these teams of 3 or 4. Yeah, that's not a thing. There's no team of 3 or 4 that can do this. I wish there was. I mean, we'd hope we'd have a bunch of teams and it would, work great. But, it's really it's a totality of a department is the team. And if you don't have everybody working together to do something like this, and you can't work as a cohesive unit in one big unit, and then that includes law enforcement in general as you move into other jurisdictions where you need their assistance, because you can only stretch your manpower so far. It just can't be done unless you have everybody's participation in that type of event. So
this is a 30-minute podcast, but if we actually went into all the details, all the manpower, all the hours, everything involved, this could be a 30-day podcast.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if we just broke down the evidence parts of how we got where we got and how we got there, that part by itself is amazing. I mean, just from when I started my career to now, what we can do and the technology that we use and vice versa. I mean, it's also, in areas it doesn't mean that it's gotten easier. In many ways, it's gotten harder. And so you have to process all that stuff. I mean, I use phones as an example. When I started, phones, you just dialed and there was maybe a address book in there. Now phones are multi-$1,000 computers, with information and things like that. So, I mean, it is a lot that has to be gone through, and you could talk about this stuff for absolutely forever.
Yeah. So just another good example of how well our detective division works and how important it is for everybody to work together and all the other agencies that came together to make this a successful arrest. So it's good work.
Really.
All right, guys. Until next time, we will be back for episode 3. See you later.
Hey, Greater Lafayette. This is Chad Crockover. I'm the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Lafayette. Just here to talk a little bit about what we do. We match kids with volunteers in the area. These volunteers are kind of role models and mentors for these kids in the community. Right now, we have 46 kids waiting to be matched. We have 14 volunteers, or bigs as we call them, waiting to be matched with them. And the average little, or these kids wait up to 5 months to be matched. So we need your help. We need people to volunteer. It's really only an hour a week to change a kid's life. That's an hour. I mean, it's like lunch break. We know that mental health is also a huge area of concern in our community, and we know that our littles have a stronger sense of belonging because of being matched. We know that our littles feel like they're doing better because they've been matched. We know that our littles feel better about themselves due to their relationship with their big. And also, our littles feel more confident they're going to be able to achieve their goals. And so, again, we're saying that we're asking for the community, for Greater Lafayette, Tippecanoe County, reach out to us at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Lafayette to be a volunteer, to be a mentor, to truly change someone's life. Thanks for your time.